subscribe.
London in the 1960s is swinging. It is perhaps the most exciting city in the world.
London in the 60s was the centre of the world. It was the time of the British invasion. You had the miniskirt, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones.
But this glamorous city also has a dark side of extortion and violence. And it's run by two identical twins, Reggie and Ronnie Kray.
The Krays controlled the underworld in London. There was nobody prepared to challenge them. Do you understand?
They were ruthless. They knew that their name struck fear. People were afraid to speak up because they knew if they did, they would be either striped or killed.
Ronnie and Reggie would fight like mad.
Over time, the Kray twins built a reputation as identical enforcers of the London Underground.
Suddenly you had celebrity gangsters. It's something that had only ever happened in America.
They were the king's blood. Nobody stood in their way.
Identical twins Ronald and Reginald Kray were born just 10 minutes apart.
The Kray twins were born on the 24th of October 1933. Reggie was first. They were born into a very poor area in the East End of London.
The East End of London was notorious because of prostitutes, crime, thieving, you name it.
The novelty of identical twins was a ray of sunshine in this shady London neighborhood.
When Mrs. Kray had the twins, she was so proud. They were absolutely identical. Jet black hair, dark eyes. They were celebrities.
I think that's where the craving for attention, which the Krays always had, I think that's where it developed right at the start.
Well, I think the twins became violent because they had to survive in the East End, which was a very dangerous place, and you used your fists to make it through.
And as streetwise teenagers, the Krays developed fearsome reputations.
They were known in the East End as the fighting Krays. They had a thirst for fighting.
They was always in trouble. They had a very vicious streak in them.
The Kray twins developed a reputation for toughness.
Reg and Ron always had the others back.
They were just ferocious, and they always fought together. You know, if Ronnie was fighting a boy, there was no way that Reggie was 4 foot away.
You wasn't fighting one person, you was fighting the two of them. If you had to take them out, you'd have to take them out together.
But the Kray twins wanted more than to be feared. They dreamed of fighting their way to the big time.
Boxing in the East End was the way out of poverty and squalor. There weren't many career options. You could either be a thief or a criminal, or you could box.
Her grandfather, Cannonball Lee, introduced them to the box. It was natural for them to fall into that area, you know.
Inside the ring, the twins turned their naked aggression into victories.
They were very, very good. They were in the Repton Boxing Club. Boxing was a huge part of their life.
They won several junior boxing championships. My dad was very keen on boxing, and he always used to say they were great little boxers.
Both of the Krays showed promise, but it was the smarter, swifter twin Reg who had the makings of a champion.
He was a bruiser, Ronnie, but Reggie was a more classy fighter.
Reg was the artist, if you like, the pugilist who had potential to be British champion, if not world champion.
At 18 years of age, the Kray twins are featured on the same bill at a professional boxing championship.
Ronnie and Reggie found themselves boxing competitively in London's Royal Albert Hall. This was their big chance to break free of the East End, to be somebody's other than just the twins.
And the outcome of their matches reflects the twins' different personalities.
Ronnie was disqualified for not obeying rules, but Reggie won the fight.
Once again, it was Reg Kray who emerged as the top twin.
Reg had come out with all the plaudits, probably something that irked Ronnie a little bit.
Reg was well on his way to becoming a national boxing champion.
This was a chance for Reg to make something of himself, to get away from the usual career path in the East End of villainy.
Reggie had everything. You know, the integrity and the dedication, the aim, the stance, but that was taken away from him.
Just a few weeks after Reg's victorious night, the Kray twins were arrested following a neighborhood brawl.
They were both convicted of this offence, and Reg received a criminal record, and because of this, he had his licence revoked by the boxing authorities. He couldn't box again.
Now for the twins. The only path to greatness is a life of crime.
At the end of the day, what was left, they were stealing, and that was the same for them.
They chose the criminal path because, above all, they wanted to be known, and they wanted people to respect them, and they wanted fame in itself.
The Fighting Krays will combine their toughness to rule the East End streets together.
Ronnie Kray wanted quick money, quick fame. Reggie could have become professional and maybe not be sucked into this world of crime, but Ronnie had that influence. You're with me, we're one, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to be the bosses of the new underworld.
Their uncommon bond will bring the Kray twins to incredible highs.
They was courted by all show business people. They met everybody. Judy Garland, Joe Louis. And they all seem to want to meet the twins, you know. They become real celebrities.
They were the kings of London. Nobody stood in their way.
But these kings of London will also sink to unthinkable lows.
You only had to look the wrong way. He's cut people's faces, cut people's hands, arms. He really was quite perverted and very sadistic.
Identical twins Reggie and Ronnie Kray fought to survive on the tough streets of East End London.
Violence was a way of life in the East End, and that was the world that Reggie and Ronnie came into.
Having failed as prize fighters, the twins returned to the streets looking for fame and fortune.
Krays, like many other East End boys, saw their only future as entering crime.
A physically intimidating pair, the Kray brothers used violence and coercion to make a profit.
Reggie and Ronald Kray went into a protection racket, which meant that they were paid by local pubs and other businesses for a peaceful existence, so there would be no trouble.
The Kray twins muscled their way into money laundering, theft, and extortion.
They were bullies in essence, you know, they used their physical violence to take over that little patch of London. That was how the Krays started off, and that is how they became able to develop their wealth and develop their empire.
Reg and Ron purchased the Regal Billiard Hall, which becomes their first base of operations.
They bought their first business, which was the billiard hall, and that's when it all really started to develop for them to do what they did, which was basically making money out of intimidating people.
The twins form a devoted gang of criminal associates known as the Firm.
To have protection, you've got to have a gang, a firm. So when people heard this, they'd want to be with the twins. 6 becomes 8, becomes 10, becomes 20. And that's how this firm grew.
Word travels quickly, and soon everyone knows that if you want to do business in East London, you deal with Ron and Reg Kray.
They started to make headlines in the criminal circles. People started to hear about the Krays getting a deal done.
If the Krays knew that you had just got a business deal that was crooked and they got to hear about it, they wanted some of it.
But when it comes to murder for hire, these twin gangsters never get their hands dirty.
People used to go to them and say, "We got some business and work to be done. Can you handle it?" And they'd say, "Yeah, we can handle it," but they couldn't handle anything. So they used to come to me, and I used to handle it for them.
And if you didn't play by their rules, the Kray twins would make you pay.
Ronnie and Reggie were so intimidating to everybody because there were two of them. They were known for being excessively violent.
If you dare to define them, the punishment was severe. And one of their favourite punishments was striping, where they'd take down your pants and slash your buttocks, and victims couldn't walk for weeks.
As their reputation grows, the twins are both feared and respected. And as the money pours in, the fighting Krays transform into charismatic gangster twins who always dress the part.
They were very keen on American gangsters because they were heavily influenced by the movies. They would dress in the style of Al Capone, and they knew that through image they could draw people around them.
And as they've known since they were children, when you multiply things by 2, you have twice the effect.
The twins realised how powerful it was to have a twin with them. It made them stand out. It made them unique. Dressing the same, making sure the hair was combed the same.
But the Kray twins were identical in looks only.
They were completely different personalities. Reggie, he had more charm. You could talk to him.
Reg was essentially the businessman, thinker, somebody who was constantly looking to better himself.
Reg runs cool, while Ron burns white hot.
He was a Jekyll and Hyde character. At one time he could be sort of the life and soul of the party, and the next minute that kind of dark figure.
And Ron Kray could be extremely violent.
You only had to look the wrong way. He'd cut people's faces, cut people's hands, arms, just for that wrong look. He really was quite perverted and very sadistic.
So Reggie works hard to keep his younger brother's violent temper under wraps.
Reggie, he was the pacifier to the other one, the calm influence.
Reg almost felt that it was just his job in life to look after Ron. That's part and parcel of being a twin.
But Reg works even harder to protect the firm from Ronnie's big secret.
Ronnie never had any girlfriends. He liked boys, but of course it was never mentioned. In those days, homosexuality was well kept under the table.
They didn't want people to know because they would have been open to ridicule. It was all done undercover, you know.
Reggie was a businessman, and he was always concerned that Ronnie's unpredictable violence and homosexuality could be a threat to their business.
Ron's sexuality combined with his violence puts twin Reg in a difficult position.
It was a very disturbing time because Reggie, as much as he wanted to protect his brother, was realising that Ronnie really did have a problem.
Eventually, Ron's violent nature catches up with him.
Ron was convicted of assaulting a guy in a pretty vicious fight where he stabbed him with a bayonet, and he received a 3-year jail sentence for that.
And for the first time in their lives, the Kray twins are separated.
It turned out to be a pivotal moment in their lives. Ronnie was not in a good frame of mind. He deteriorated considerably.
He hated prison. Prison wasn't for Ronnie Kray.
Back in London, Reg continues to expand the Kray financial empire without his twin brother.
Reg obviously used that time well. He went on to develop the business. He opened a nightclub called the Double R in tribute to his brother.
Everything had calmed down. There was no fights. Everything was going smoothly and they were earning money. And all this was being fed back to Ron and he hated it. He absolutely hated it because he wanted to be there.
After 2 years in prison, Ronnie's mental condition takes a dramatic turn for the worse. Doctors diagnose him as schizophrenic.
His madness had taken a whole different shape, having hallucinations, having flashbacks. He just basically couldn't cope with prison life.
It ended with the doctors certifying him as insane.
Ronnie Kray is institutionalized at Long Grove Mental Hospital.
In the mental asylum, Ronnie was given powerful drugs which helped to stabilize his violent moods. But even though the drugs calmed Ronnie down, he was desperate to get out.
Ron was getting frustrated about being in there, upset that he was away from his family. He wanted to be free man again. He wanted to be back in civilization.
Reg Kray can't bear to see his twin suffer, so he decides to take action.
The only thing that really the Krays could do, the only option they had, was to try and get Ron out of Long Grove Mental Institution.
Reg will soon come up with a breathtaking plan.
It's one of those great Kray stories. They had the gumption for anything.
A plan so clever that only identical twins could ever pull it off.
It was so outrageous you'd only read about it in a crime novel.
But someone will threaten to tear the twins apart for good.
That's when it started to crumble. I think Ronnie thought, this is it. My empire is crumbling because of this girl.
As Reg Kray builds a criminal empire on the streets of London, his identical brother Ron languishes in a mental asylum.
Reggie could function without Ronnie, but not the other way around.
But Reg may have just found a way to spring his twin from incarceration. It's Visitors' Day at Long Grove Mental Hospital.
Reg arrived at Long Grove Hospital with a couple of members of the firm just in time for afternoon tea with Ronnie.
Reg and Ron both dressed similarly for a visit, but this time they were both very, very identical.
And the Kray twins move forward with their daring plan.
They're both dressed in the same blue shirt and red tie, but Reggie has a coat on. And while they're talking, drinking tea and shooting the breeze, Reg craftily gives Ronnie his coat.
They managed to swap seats without the nurses noticing. It was then that Ron Kray got up and asked if he could go to the toilet, which of course was outside the secure gates. The staff, unknown to them, didn't realise that this was Ron Kray.
20 minutes pass before the nurse realizes something's wrong. Very wrong.
Ron then never came back.
And there's Reggie sitting there instead of Ronnie, you know.
When approached by the nurse, Reggie reveals that he's not Ronnie Kray.
So Reggie produces his driving license to show that he's Reggie and not Ronnie.
The nurse immediately sounds the alarm, but it's too late.
Once they realized that the wrong twin had left the premises, they started a manhunt for Ronnie.
By this time, Ron was back in the heart of the East End and safely under wraps. So the Krays got away with it. They'd managed to spring Ron from the mental institution.
Reg's daring escape plan works perfectly.
Reggie then found a doctor that was willing to declare his brother Ron sane, and then he went back to prison. It was just a short time where he could be released.
Now back at each other's side, the Kray twins plan to rule the London underworld together. Once again reunited, Reggie and Ronnie Kray are determined to expand their criminal empire across London. They move their network from the rough East End to the upscale West End.
This opened up a whole new world. They realised that there was an opportunity for them to make even more money.
The West End was very prosperous. It had fabulous hotels. It had fabulous clubs. The West End was where all the glamorous people went. So, knowing this, the twins thought, this is our next step.
They found this club called Esmeralda's Barn, which they opened.
With the opening of their new gambling club, the Kray twins continue to follow the path of American gangsters, mixing showbiz with organized crime.
When the Krays reached their peak in the 60s with their glamorous nightclubs, they really ruled London. But behind that, they were still carrying on with their criminal business, which involved money laundering, theft and robbery.
As their power grows, the Kray twins bask in their success.
They really knew in their hearts then they were the kings of London. And at this time, their influence was unbelievable. Nobody stood in their way.
This was the peak of the Krays' criminal career. You know, they were making more money than they could spend.
And Reggie and Ronnie Kray become London celebrities, who are sought out by glamorous visitors from across the pond.
They was courted by all showbiz people. They met everybody. Judy Garland, I met Joe Louis with them, and George Raft, and they all seemed to want to meet the twins. You know, they become real celebrities.
And they're caught in it. They're loving it. Having their photograph taken with this person, with that person.
Fame and fortune allows Ron Kray to indulge his passions.
He could be much more open about his sexuality. He now became openly homosexual, which kind of coincided with the sexual revolution that was starting to emerge in the 60s in the UK.
Confident in his position as part of London's most notorious gangster duo, Ron feels invincible. But a scandal emerges that threatens to destroy everything the Krays have built. The summer of 1964, a scandalous story breaks out in the Sunday Mirror newspaper about Ron Kray and a member of Parliament, Lord Boothby.
Lord Boothby was a very famous and very influential politician of the times. Ronnie was organising parties. Boothby would go to these parties, which were exclusively for gay men. To have a politician directly involved with someone like the Krays it was a massive story.
It's a story that brings the Kray twins the wrong kind of attention.
Because the scandal involved such high-profile people in society, it caused Scotland Yard to take a close look at the Krays and their criminal enterprise. The protection rackets, the fraud cases, and extortion.
Reg becomes furious with his twin for putting the firm in jeopardy.
Reggie realizes that Ronnie's cavalier behavior is a direct threat to their business. The Sunday Mirror was forced to print an apology and pay Lord Boothby £40,000, which is a huge amount of money in those days.
Ironically, The scandal that could have destroyed the Kray twins now emboldens them.
Suddenly newspapers refused to have anything to do with the Krays, and Scotland Yard dropped all its investigations into the Kray criminal activities.
It gave the Krays a feeling, and especially Ronnie Kray, a feeling of being untouchable.
And as Ron leads the life of a swinging bachelor, Reg finds true love.
Reggie had different girlfriends, but he'd never been really serious about anybody until he met Frances.
Reggie begins to court Frances Shay, a local East End beauty.
She was young, she was 18, just going on 19. Absolutely gorgeous looking. Reggie was determined that this was the girl for him, and he absolutely fell head over heels in love with her.
In February 1965, Reg announces their engagement.
Frances was his fantasy. He was going to actually have this other world, away from the crime, away from the clubs, away from the violence, where he could lead a normal life.
But identical twin Ron refuses to let a woman come between them.
Ronnie does not want Reggie to have a normal life. He becomes jealous of Frances, taking away his other half.
They had a lot of arguments at this time in their lives because Ronnie didn't want Reggie with Frances. And he'd say, what do you want to get married for? We're all right how we are.
And one night, Ron's jealousy reaches a boiling point.
Well, there was a terrible fight between the two of them. It was about Frances, and it got very, very bloody. They were really bashing hell out of each other. And in the end, they were pulled apart.
Ronnie announced that he'd had enough and he was walking away from both of them. He didn't want to know anything about them ever again.
The once inseparable Kray twins had been torn apart.
That was actually the first time there had been such a major rift between Ronnie and Reggie.
And without his twin Reg by his side, Ron is about to be pushed over the edge.
It was almost a case of the madness finally finding its time to strike. He's a ticking time bomb waiting to go off.
Together, identical twins Reggie and Ronnie Kray have fought their way up to become the gangster kings of London.
Throughout their life, they weren't really two separate people. They were one.
But a woman has come between them, and the volatile Ronnie takes a terrible turn for the worse. Reggie Kray weds his sweetheart, Frances Shay, on the 20th of April, 1965. But the fairy tale marriage doesn't last long.
They moved into a flat underneath Ronnie, which was not good news for Frances.
The marriage wasn't as a marriage should be. And Reggie was out most nights with Ronnie.
Despite being a married man, Reg can't pull himself away from his twin brother.
Reggie, he was spending less and less time with her and more with Ronnie because that's what Ronnie demanded. And I think that she just became overwhelmed.
Frances resents Ron's power over Reg, but there's little she can do.
Frances thought that Ronnie was a terrible influence on Reggie. She was terrified of him. She was frightened of him. I think she felt her life with Reggie slipping away.
Things took a turn for the worse for Frances because Ronnie would do things to upset her, and she became quite unbalanced. And within a matter of months, Frances had moved back into her parents' home.
Once again, Ron has his twin all to himself. But things are only going to get worse for Reg. Despite having Reg back at his side, Ronnie Kray continues to battle his personal demons.
He was falling deeper and deeper into madness and paranoia. He saw a clairvoyant who told him he was destined for greatness through violence.
He'd be polishing guns, polishing the machete, saying what he was going to do with it.
Ronnie's delusions about what he could do and what he could get away with was spinning completely out of control.
Ron starts to hear voices telling him to kill, and his dark fantasies slowly become reality.
Ronnie is getting more and more consumed with his obsessions about killing. He's got to kill somebody to prove that he's a real gangster, because you can't be a #1 gangster without killing someone.
Ronnie had a death list of people he wanted to iron out, to kill,
Ron focuses his violent fantasies on the people he believes are out to get him.
There was always a rivalry with Richardson gang over in South London. They was moving in on different parts of the West End.
And in a London pub one night, a member of the Richardson gang is overheard ridiculing Ron's sexuality.
He's just a fat puff.
George Cornell was heard saying, "Where's the fat puff?"
When news of the gay slur reaches Ron Kray, he finally snaps.
Ron suddenly decided that, revenge needed to be exacted and sooner rather than later. It was almost a case of the madness finally finding its time to strike. Ron received a phone call from one of his spies to say that George Cornell was drinking with somebody in the Blind Beggar pub.
Ronnie packs his 9mm Mauser revolver and heads over to the Blind Beggar.
Ronnie Kray walked in. George Cornell was sitting at the bar.
And then Cornell turns around and says, "Hey, look who this is."
Look who's here.
Ron draws his weapon and points it at George Cornell.
Instead of Ronnie firing one over Cornell's shoulder, Ronnie fires right into Cornell's brain.
He just waltzed out the pub and nobody did nothing.
Ronnie has committed his ultimate crime, his dream of murder. And off he goes into the night.
Ronnie Kray has finally answered the voices in his head and committed murder.
He killed a man in full view of the East End of London. He'd earned his strike as a #1 gangster.
And now that Ron has earned his stripes, he won't be satisfied until his identical twin earns them too.
He's thinking in his head, "I've done mine. Now it's Reggie's turn."
Kill him, Ray! Kill him!
Ron Kray has just murdered someone in cold blood.
Having carried out the ultimate crime and not being arrested for it gave Ron Kray this untouchability factor. He was the untouchable king of London and certainly fueled the fires of his delusions of grandeur.
As his madness grows, Brother Reg knows that Ron's volatile behavior could destroy everything they've built.
Ronnie was becoming an increasingly bigger burden to Reggie. Ronnie's madness and paranoia always threatened to bring their criminal empire down.
After the Cornell killing, Ron is forced to go into hiding, leaving Reg and the firm to clean up the mess.
The firm have been in and spoke to the barmaid, they've spoke to this person, that person, and every person calmed the whole situation down.
Privately, Reg resents Ron's poor judgment in killing Cornell.
Reg was shocked by it. He knew then that their lives were going to change forever, and now it became a case of really covering up for what his brother had done.
The Kray twins' fearsome reputation remains strong. Eyewitnesses refused to help the police.
The East End clammed up. Nobody saw anything. There were no witnesses who were prepared to testify against Ronnie Kray.
The East End Code of Silence had come into its own, and for Ronnie Kray, at that moment in time, he felt as if he got away with murder.
Members of the firm feel Ronnie's unbridled violence is bad for business.
The death of Cornell became the panic, if you like, amongst the firm. People start to reconsider their part in the Kray story and whether it's safe to be working with these people. And a lot of people who were associated with the Krays at that time started to distance themselves.
It made everybody more nervous. What was he going to do next?
As his twin brother descends deeper into madness, Reg Kray's estranged wife Frances shares an eerily identical experience.
Frances was increasingly getting worse. She was taking drugs, tranquilizers. She wound up in a mental institution because she tried to commit suicide.
Reg reaches out to Frances, but it's too little, too late.
Frances was found dead from an overdose of sleeping pills.
Reg is absolutely devastated.
Frances, the love of his life, was gone. Reg is consumed with grief. He drank and drank and drank.
He was in a terrible, terrible state. No one could go near him or say the wrong thing because he was just like a loose cannon.
Reg Kray's volatile behavior starts to mirror that of his identical twin, Ronnie.
That sent Reg into a spiral in depression which he never got out of. He was having fights and having arguments, and Reg was starting to act irrationally and almost mimic the behaviour of his brother, which made them doubly dangerous.
Unbalanced and bloodthirsty, Ron begins to taunt his twin brother.
They were two people with one murderous impulse, as far as Ronnie was concerned. And he pushed and pushed and pushed because he felt that his twin had to kill to cement their bond.
He would say, well, that's your turn, Reggie. I've committed my murder. You know, when are you going to do your one? It's sick, really.
A party is organized by the Krays in an apartment in North London. Jack the Hat McVitie, a disgraced Kray associate, has been lured there.
They paid Jack the Hat to do a contract killing, and when he hadn't done it, Ronnie was furious and told Reggie they had to do something about it.
It's the perfect opportunity for Reg to pull even with Ron.
Jack the Hat was brought in by a couple of the firm members into a room where Ron and Reg were sitting.
Ronnie Kray handed Reggie the gun, and the screaming was, well, do it, I've done mine, do yours, kill him, shoot him.
And just like his brother before him, Reg Kray finally snaps.
Reggie pulls the gun out, fires it at McVitie, but the gun don't work. There's a rough and tumble. McVitie tries to escape.
Reg is handed a carving knife and he plunges it into Jack the Hat's throat.
He continued to stab him on the floor. He was practically pinned to the floor, bones and gristle and blood was everywhere.
This can't be real. There lying in the middle of the room is Jack the Hat. I cannot comprehend the fact that they've killed him. You just don't do it in front of that many people.
So now, the twins, Ronnie and Reggie, have actually both committed a murder, and they have cemented their bond, fulfilled their bond as twins in blood.
Scotland Yard has spent months putting a case together against the Kray twins. to tie them to the murders of George Cornell and Jack McVitie.
A group of detectives were working, collating information and meeting with different underworld characters and kind of building a picture.
After 9 months of investigation, police finally arrest Reg and Ron Kray on May 8th, 1968. 24 associates are also arrested.
The firm members were really starting to think, very carefully about, themselves, and slowly but surely, various members of the firm started to cut their own deals to save their own skins.
It was like a house of cards. One by one, members of the firm started talking to the police and giving them details about the Krays businesses and the 2 murders.
The police try everything in their power to get me to go against the Krays. But I'm steeped in East End history. It cost me my wife and my daughter to keep my mouth shut about the Krays. It's the beginning of the end.
The Krays and members of the firm appear for trial at the Old Bailey courthouse.
It was one of the longest trials in British criminal history.
But these gangsters know the verdict's a foregone conclusion.
We all went down. My brother Tony, 15 years. Me, 15 years. Freddie Foreman, 10.
The court saves the harshest punishment for the Kray twins.
Ronnie and Reggie were given life sentences, minimum 30 years. Now, for the first time in their lives, they were to be separated permanently.
For the Kray twins, it's a fate worse than death.
At 34 years of age, much of their adult life had been spent in crime, immersed in violence and intimidation, but they'd done it together. They were as one.
The twin thing was obviously something which was always going to play its part, and ultimately their lives were mapped out for them. It's a path that led to murder.
Ronnie and Reggie Kray spent the rest of their lives in prison and passed into history as the notorious gangster twins of swinging London.
The Krays hold a special place in British folklore as the most famous gangsters that Britain ever produced. Individually, they probably wouldn't have been anything, but together as twins, they ruled London.
They'd love to look back now, I think, from wherever they are and know that they've become what we call their myths, aren't they? People will always film, always talk about them, always write about them.
Ultimately, the Krays were a unique set of twins, and nobody will ever come again like them.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.